Hey, what's up, guys? Long time no see, long time no video. Finally, I'm back recording a video. And yeah, it's just to be honest, it's been a really crazy summer. So, just a lot of stuff has happened. So, we had our Mexico mission trip, we had our VBS as well. There was the Horizon Retreat, which is just a big youth retreat. And then I had some stuff with our senior class. So, we had our senior banquet, and then we had a senior trip this week. So it's just been a really, really crazy summer. And then also on top of that, just whenever I may have had some time, just because I was so busy and preoccupied, I really couldn't think of a good video. And so I didn't want to just like make one for the sake of making one. And so here is a decent video, I hope, a pretty interesting one. And as you can see from the thumbnail and from the title of the video today, it is, would Jesus be a Republican? And really what I'm trying to ask is, kind of like, what was Jesus's politics, and like what can we learn from Jesus in terms of how we should view politics? Okay, and so what I want to do here is I want to start with a passage that I think is kind of probably the most quoted when it comes to the topic of politics, and that comes from Mark chapter 12, verse 13 through 17. Let me read that for us. It says, "And they sent to him some of the Pharisees and some of the Herodians to trap him in his talk. And they came and said to him, 'Teacher, we know that you are true and do not care about anyone's opinion, for you are not swayed by appearances, but truly teach the way of God. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Should we pay them or should we not?' But knowing their hypocrisy, he said to them, 'Why put me to the test? Bring me a denarius, and let me look at it.' And they brought one. And he said to them, 'Whose likeness and inscription is this?' They said to him, 'Caesar's.' Jesus said to them, 'Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's.' And they marveled at him." Okay, and so what can we learn from this passage? Well, in short, we have here the Pharisees and some of the Herodians. They're trying to trap Jesus. Again, they always come to Jesus with their tricks up their sleeves, trying to trap Jesus to have him say something that they could either bring him to court over, or they could certainly say, hey, he is saying something that is against God. And so here they have him. It's not quite sure what it is, like what result they're looking for. Because if Jesus says, well, we should absolutely pay taxes, then they could say something about him in terms of him not being patriotic when it comes to the Jewish people, because the Jewish people were being extorted. They were being taken advantage of through things like taxes, especially through the tax collectors, because the tax collectors, on top of the taxes they were to collect for Caesar, for the Roman Empire, they would often use that as an opportunity to charge them a little extra. And then had Jesus said something like, well, we shouldn't pay taxes at all, then they would have had some charge against him in terms of like the legal system, right? So it's not quite clear which result they were looking for here. Either way, they're trying to test him. They're trying to trap him. And so what does Jesus say? He says, well, give to Caesar what is Caesar's and give to God what is God's. In short, what I believe Jesus is saying here is, well, we have an obligation living in this land to pay taxes. And so this is, from a very worldly perspective, this is Caesar's money. So let's just give him the money that he's due and move on. But he gives us a greater ethic, a greater principle, a greater, I guess, life law to live by. So there's man's law and then there's God's law. He says, give to God the things that are God's. And I would say that really trumps everything overall. But under giving everything to God, we do have to, according to Jesus here, at least, we do have to live according to the law of the land. And that's really echoed also in Acts chapter 5, verse 29. Let me go ahead and read that. That says, "But Peter and the apostles answered, 'We must obey God rather than men.'" And so just in short, Peter answers in this encounter here. He says, we must obey God rather than men. And I don't think he's saying we shouldn't obey men, but he's giving an order of priority. Like, so the priority is to obey God. After that, so long as we are actually obeying God, then we obey men. Another way to put that is, so long as someone isn't asking us to sin and do something evil, then we should do that. We should submit to authorities. Another verse I want to share with you, it comes from John chapter 6, verse 15. And in this verse, we see something interesting here, because some people like to paint Jesus as this like political revolutionary. Like Jesus came to start a revolution, and so therefore we should do that too. We should start revolutions wherever we can and however we can. Like we have to fight the power, because that's what Jesus did too. Well, let's look at John 6:15. It says, perceiving then that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, Jesus withdrew again to the mountain by himself. And so Jesus wasn't interested in being the king that the people wanted, right? In reality, we know Jesus is a king, right? He does have a kingdom, but it wasn't the one of political revolution. It wasn't the one that the people were looking for at that time, to overthrow the Roman Empire, to be their Messiah figure, to lead them out of oppression. That's not who he was. That's not who he came to be. The people wanted that, but that's not what Jesus wanted. And so we see Jesus here not being interested in that. He withdraws from the people. He gets away from that, and he goes and spends time in solitude. One final passage I want to share before I share just another kind of word here is it comes from John 18. And this is the encounter with Jesus and Pilate. And so it says in verse 33, it says, so Pilate entered his headquarters again, called Jesus, and said to him, are you the king of the Jews? Jesus answered, do you say this of your own accord, or did others say it to you about me? Pilate answered, am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you over to me. What have you done? Jesus answered, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting, that I might not be delivered over to the Jews. But my kingdom is not from the world. Then Pilate said to him, so you are a king? Jesus answered, you say that I am a king. For this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. Okay, and so what do we see in that encounter? Again, we see Jesus not following what people wanted. People wanted him to be this Messiah figure. And then also the Pharisees are wanting to call Jesus king, like that he is this revolutionary person. He is this person that is a threat in some way, or at least is mocking the Roman Empire. And so if they can paint him that way, then they can give Pilate reason to crucify him. But what does that Jesus actually say? He says, well, my kingdom is not of this world. And secondly, he says, if it was of this world, well, my people would be fighting for me. But my kingdom isn't of this world, so that's not actually happening. And then thirdly, Jesus says, you say I'm a king, but it's for this purpose that I came. I came to bear witness to the truth. And so, yes, he is a king. Yes, he does have a kingdom, but his purpose in coming, his first coming, was to bear witness to the truth. It was to expose the darkness. It was to show mankind that mankind is in need of a savior, and here is the solution: Jesus Christ in the flesh, dying for the sins of the world, and then raising on the third day, so that all people who would believe on his name would be saved. And so, yes, Jesus is a king. Yes, he does have a kingdom, but not the one that people thought he would have, or thought he would create, or thought he would be, and certainly not the one that the Pharisees were trying to make him out to be as well. Okay, so coming to the question of the day, right? Would Jesus be a Republican? You could probably guess by now, just from the passages that I've shared. No, I don't think he would be a Republican, nor do I think he would be a Democrat. But that's just because Jesus is the king, right? The king wouldn't pick a political party. He has his own, quote unquote party. It's the kingdom party. It's the family of God party. It is his party, right? And so what do we do with that information, right? I would say this. I would say, as Christians, our allegiance is to Jesus Christ. Our allegiance is to God. It is not to people. It's not to a political party. Our allegiance is always, first and foremost, not even any close seconds, it is to God. But having said that, I think there is kind of a secondary question here, because I think that's the primary thing that we have to get as Christians. The secondary question is, well, as I follow Jesus, I'm living in America, and there are these really important topics that I would like to vote on. In order to do that, living in America, we're like in this two-party system, right? Democrats or Republicans for the most part. There's other parties, but I mean, in terms of significance, they don't really count in terms of the vote, right? So what do you do? What do you do? I think, in short, every Christian has to make their decision. You have to look at the scripture. You have to have an ethic. Again, your allegiance is to Jesus Christ. And as your allegiance is to Jesus and your allegiance is to his word and his law, you have to make a choice on how you will vote. Do I think a good Christian could vote Republican? Yeah, I think so. Do I think a good Christian could vote Democrat? While I have some issues with that personally, just as a person, right, and their interpretation of things, I would say a good Christian could vote Democrat. Could a good Christian choose not to vote at all? I think that's also possible. If they've really, really done their best, they understand that we have our civic duties, and yet in the end, they're just too torn to vote. I think before God, they could have a clear conscience, right? And so my question to you is, are you putting Jesus first? And when it comes time for you to vote, if you're not of legal age to vote yet, but when it comes time for you to vote, is that your main priority? Is it, I love Jesus, I want God's law to be obeyed, to be honored in this land, and so because of that, this is how I will vote, or perhaps not vote. And so that's my question for you. What will you do? How will you display your allegiance to Jesus, who is our King, and we his people? And so I hope that's helpful for you guys. If you have more questions about it, if you have something to say, please leave some comments down there below. I always check them out. You could always ask me some questions in person too, or send me a message. I always like to hear those things too. And so anyway, leave a like, comment, subscribe, turn on the bell. You know the drill. God bless you. Love you. Peace.